Beyond, and hello everyone. My name is Jonathon Dornbush, and this is Podcast Beyond, episode 642. And if you didn't know this about me, back in middle school, I used to write parody Eminem songs as my math teacher, as a rap artist. If you're wondering why I'm telling you that right now, it's because I'm vamping for time, because we had so many technical difficulties before starting the show. I may have to vamp for time during the show. So get used to a lot of those weird facts. I'm joined this week by Lucy O'Brien.
Hello and beyond. I just do want to apologize in advance. I am half the problems, the technical difficulties that Dorno was just talking about. For some reason, my internet today is dropping in and out, so I may just suddenly disappear and then pop back in. Please pretend like it didn't happen. It is a pleasure to be here for some percentage of this show.
We're glad to have you here, whatever that percentage turns out to be. We're also joined this week by Max Scoville.
Did you just say tentacle difficulties? I think you said tentacle difficulties, and that sounds like something bad. That's just bad news.
It's like
Beyond is now a hentai.
I'll slowly pan the camera down, and it's like, ooh.
Well,
we're also joined this week by Tom Release Date Marks.
No,
that's not it.
No, there have been some good guesses in the meantime, but no. But this episode is definitely under some Lovecraftian curse, so
Yeah.
Tentacle difficulties is probably real.
What we're dealing with. Before we get into the meat of the show and a lot of the big PlayStation news we do have to talk about this week, first thing I wanted to mention was, if you haven't heard recently in the last few weeks, we do have on the IGN official store an elderly Irish woman shirt, which you can pick up and buy one for yourself. It is based, of course, on our wonderful Lucy O'Brien. And thank you to everyone who has been buying one, because you have made it one of the most popular shirts on that store since it launched.
Seriously?
It's like the 17th most popular shirt on the store.
Okay.
I just also
That's pretty high. There's like hundreds of shirts.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who has bought one of these things, and also thank you so much to everyone who's tweeted out their photos of them wearing the t-shirt at me. I'm going to put it all together in a big collage at the end and like share it. Well, at the end.
Have you gotten any people who've bought them for actual elderly Irish relatives who are women?
No, but I think we it's a demographic that we're thinking about, Mac.
We are targeting that demographic now.
It's definitely in the backs of our minds for sure.
It is absolutely, and thank you to everyone who's been commenting on the show and sending those tweets to Lucy. We really appreciate you supporting the show like that. And of course, if you want one, store.ign.com has them, and you can buy a Beyond shirt as well as all of the other IGN shows we have shirts for too. Before we get into the show, I did want to read, it's been a while since I've done one of these, but comment of the week. We like to highlight some of the fun, weird, silly comments from our show every week when I remember to do this. And this week's comes from the YouTube version of episode 641 from James. James was following up on our discussion last week about what the name of the Sony robot might be. And James wrote, absolutely no word of a lie. I had an uncle Godwin when I was really young. He wasn't actually a blood relative, but basically my granddad's adopted father. His name was Godwin Salt. He was an aristocratic farm owner, and despite evidence to the contrary, he was not invented by Charles Dickens.
That is amazing. And also, the robot should absolutely be called Godwin Salt.
Salt. Yeah, that is a perfect name.
That name is incredible.
Yeah, it's also definitely like a BioShock villain's name just waiting to be used.
Oh, yeah. It's probably been used, and we just forgot.
You just played the first BioShock a few months back, so you may find out in the other games.
That could also be a Far Cry villain.
Yeah.
Also, just to give you a sense of how warped time is, a few months back, I think it was like a year ago?
It was, yeah, you're right. Oh my God. Well, anyway, speaking of time being irrelevant, let's talk about a news story that happened just yesterday as we're recording 2 days before this episode airs, but could have happened a year ago, because that's how it can feel sometimes. We learned at the beginning of this week, we'll start with the news and then get into the like less savory aspect of it. But we did learn The Last of Us Part 2 and Ghost of Tsushima have brand new release dates. The Last of Us Part 2 is coming June 19th, I believe. I'm going to double check that. And Ghost of Tsushima is July 17th. So
it's so exciting.
Yeah, what ended up originally being an indefinite move was a 3-ish week move for The Last of Us Part 2, and then Ghost, which was originally supposed to come out at the end of June 26th. Obviously, it would not be great to release those two major PS4 games within a week of each other, so this gives Ghost some breathing room in between. How do we feel about these new release dates? Obviously, they're close. We don't have to wait too long for them. How do you all feel about them?
Yeah, I mean, like we spent a lot of time speculating how far apart Ghost of Tsushima would be to The Last of Us, but I sort of feel like that was yesteryear. That was your, and now things have changed, and I don't really care if two games are two PlayStation exclusives are released relatively close together, because I'm going to be playing them both to the very end because I have that time. And I think it's super exciting. I'm sad that The Last of Us had to sort of make that really dramatic sort of call, but I'm very pleased that it's sort of like now we have a definitive release date once more.
I love that you phrased this not as two new games got delayed again, but we got two brand new release dates.
Yeah.
No, this is. I was expecting, Ghost of Tsushima to get kicked down the road a little bit, and like honestly, a 3-week delay is not that bad. And I was actually like kind of bummed out by like the Last of Us delayed indefinitely, because that's like mom and dad, are you getting back together? And it's like, well, we're separated indefinitely. It's like that's I don't know. That sounds like so serious and upsetting. So that's.
But I that's the weird thing about the word is indefinitely can go both ways, right? Indefinitely could mean this game is canceled. Like obviously it wasn't for The Last of Us. That no one ever thought that was the case for The Last of Us, but like it could mean that in certain contexts, or it could just mean a couple weeks. Like it's a word that genuinely can like just mean we don't know, as like the word they use pretty much, and that's what it ended up being.
I agree, but generally people think of it as a like glass half empty kind of thing. Like, if someone
It's
says
got a negative,
our relationship, like we've separated indefinitely, like no one's like, it sounds like it could go either way. It's like, no, that relationship is like that is a done deal, my friend.
And I think that's why people are celebrating the dates, Max, not because it's like, yeah, it's 2-3 week delays or
no,
a couple
I'm
weeks
right there
delays.
with you. It's a little tiny, like just little sliver of something being definite and that we can count on. It's not like
something tangible,
maybe?
tangible that we can hold on to.
What's really funny about them too is we went in sort of expecting this could be a longer delay. Like how close could this get to the PS5 launch theoretically? Like would we see them go to the fall? My guess is it probably was a massive logistical thing to figure out of like, what does the distribution pipeline look like? As unsavory as some other stuff is that we can get to in a second, like I do think the weird like little details we don't know about this delay probably have a lot of business stuff that is just very boring to a mass audience, so that's why we don't hear about it. Like they had to figure out getting things to stores, getting things on digital, making sure countries might be able to support that stuff on the internet side.
And I totally prefer this, where they say as early as they know, hey guys, Last of Us isn't going to come out when you think it's going to come out, than the alternative, which is right now we learn that Last of Us is delayed 3 weeks, right? Like,
yeah,
I prefer they tell us early on that they know something is coming with a delay and they just don't quite know what yet. Like that's much preferable to me than finding out very, very late.
Yeah, I way prefer the way that we found out this recently. And I think something that, maybe they were looking at or not, in between those announcements, or at least like information that we got since the announcement of the delay and now, is we saw a major game like Final Fantasy VII hit 3.5 million units, despite the supplier constraints and despite the issues going on in the world. Obviously, that game's copies were already out and manufactured to a certain extent, but maybe seeing the success that game had and Animal Crossing had makes them think, okay, maybe we can still have a successful launch even with these concerns for a game this big.
And Final Fantasy did not have a clean launch, right?
Yeah.
Like Final Fantasy came out early in Australia. It was hard to get in other places. Like that was a messy launch and it still did really, really well. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that inspired.
And I think these release dates are solid, especially considering all other forms of entertainment are on pause. Like TV shows can't film, all the movies except for Tenet from Christopher Nolan have been delayed out of the summer. So June and July are pretty empty months for entertainment. So to have these two major blockbuster games while everyone's stuck at home, pretty good audience to have at your fingertips. I do want to mention, though, we did reach out because when Last of Us Part 2 got delayed, Iron Man VR was also delayed, and it wasn't mentioned in this update. We reached out to Sony, and they said expect news on that in the coming weeks. Now, again, like the word indefinitely, the coming weeks could be next week. It could be 12 weeks from now. I don't know. But hopefully we get word on that game's release at some point soon.
Come.
Leaks to come. I do want to move on, though, and still talk about The Last of Us Part 2 a little bit, because in addition to this release date announcement on Monday, over the weekend before it, and obviously on Monday in particular, we saw what allegedly and seemed to be proven true by a Naughty Dog statement were a lot of leaks of The Last of Us Part 2. Now, all of us on the show have tried to avoid all of the spoilers as much as possible. We are not going to be talking about any story beats or alleged things that happen in the game. We don't want to ruin the game for anyone who's wanting to go in as blind as we want to go into it. So we won't be ruining any of that stuff. But I do think it's worth talking about. And I'll kick it off by saying Naughty Dog commented later on Monday saying, "We know the last few days have been incredibly difficult for you. We feel the same. It's disappointing to see the release and sharing of pre-release footage from development. Do your best to avoid spoilers, and we ask that you don't spoil it for others. The Last of Us Part 2 will be in your hands soon. No matter what you see and hear, the final experience will be worth it." I think we can all agree, like, it is a huge bummer to see these spoilers out there, obviously, and having this discussion going on about the game. I want to ask you all, though, how you're feeling about it, because for me, what's really struck me is like the conversation that has come out about whether or not these leaks were a good thing or like a righteous or a just thing, which has surprised me as sort of the conversation.
Well, I think, I mean, that's on the basis that we understand that it was someone who was working in Naughty Dog who leaked this because they were disgruntled. They had and Dorno, correct me if there's been any update since or anything like that, but that that it was a pay dispute.
That's what we're operating under, knowing, like we don't have this 100% confirmed, so like there are definitely details and things we won't know for sure, but that seems to be the like operating story that we're all working with right now.
And I guess if that is the case, I feel bad for that particular employee, that they were being badly treated at work. That really sucks. And obviously there are some systemic things that need to be fixed in that regard. I think the main issue I have with anyone sort of being like, "Oh yeah, stick it to the man," blah 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 blah, is that when you leak something like this, you're not just kind of hurting the people you want to hurt. You're not just it's not a laser focused attack. It's kind of a scatter shot with a machine gun. You know what I mean? And basically everyone gets caught in the crossfire of this, and you're not, this person not only screwed over, again, the people he wanted to screw over, but he screwed over all his colleagues, all the people who had worked so hard on this game for so long. And I know leaks aren't, and I don't want to operate off the proviso that leaks are the be all and end all of a piece of art. But if you've kept it under wraps for 4, 5, 6 years, and then someone like reveals it at the finishing line, right before you're about to cross that finishing line, it's such a kick in the dick. You know what I mean? And I feel so bad for everyone who worked so hard on that game for so long. And they're a passionate bunch at Naughty Dog. Even those who aren't necessarily happy with their working conditions with crunch. Obviously there was the Jason Schreier article earlier on in the year. But that doesn't mean that they're not passionate about what they're making. That doesn't mean that they don't want to give their all. That doesn't mean they don't want to produce the best thing that they could produce. And to have someone just go almost flippantly just go, here you go, world. Here's some piecemeal information about the plot that's gonna like ruin it for so many people. So I'm really sad. I'm really frustrated. I think the conversation is nowhere near as black and white as people are making it out to be. I think there are a million other ways that this could have gone, and I'm really sad that it went. That's my take.
Yeah, I mean, we see a lot of spoiler stuff pop up, but it's kind of unusual for it to be so. Like, it's usually not malicious. Like, some people will find information and they will use it maliciously, and they'll be like, "I'm going to go, post this in YouTube comments," and there are probably people doing that right now. And it's weird to see it. Like, it's weird to see pettiness at this level. Like, for somebody who was like creatively involved with making something to be like, "I don't care." Like, I don't even know what you'd call that. It's not like it's not industrial espionage. It's like it's sort of like industrial party pooping, you know. Like it's just it's I mean we use the term spoiler, like that's it. It's something is spoiled. Like the element of surprise has gone bad, you know. Like obviously there's still plenty in the game that will surprise people and will you know, blow everyone away. And like reading a string of text on a website is not the same experience as playing a AAA video game that's been worked on by hundreds of people for, you know, for years. But at the same time, there is that like that element of surprise. There's that pageantry of something being revealed that is no longer packs quite the punch it did, you know? So.
And context of those moments is so important too, right?
Yeah.
Like it's you could spoil any number of things by just like any number of movies, TV shows, games, whatever, by just saying like a moment, but that moment in context with the setup, with the emotional investment you get to that point where it would happen, can have a very different impact on you. It can have very different meaning, it can have a very different level of quality, even if you experience it in the context it needs to be experienced.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people talking, you know, I've unfortunately gotten spoiled a little bit, so I saw some of the conversation. I've seen a lot of people like judging, oh, the story is bad, or this choice, like the story isn't good. I have all these problems. This is going to be a bad game. And it's like, like you were saying, Tom, those moments are then robbed of their context. And like, yes, there are people online saying this game is still going to sell massively. I'm not going to pretend that like suddenly Naughty Dog is going to lose millions of sales because of this, but like the tenor of conversation around the game is already starting from a like, no, maybe it's not terrible because of this activeness, and I'm going to keep going. As Lucy popped out and now she's popping back in. We're good, Lucy.
Okay, cool.
And so it's this frustrating thing where we already have to be like, okay, maybe the full game will give us a better perspective of how good or bad these moments actually are. And it robs what is obviously meant to be a very like thoughtful and thought-provoking game, given the Last of Us pedigree from the original game. Like it robs some of that initial conversation of that tone and of that cadence.
Like I'm trying to think of similar spoilers that are like the statute of limitations is like up on to like compare this to, like, and the one that I keep coming back to is like Return of the Jedi, right? Like spoilers for Return of the Jedi if anybody has not watched Star Wars Return of the Jedi, but like if you clipped just the moment of Darth Vader picking up the Emperor and throwing him down the shaft, and you put that online before that movie came out, probably a lot of people would be like, this makes no sense. This is totally weird. It doesn't make sense for any of these characters. This is stupid. That's the like build up of Darth Vader in that moment is like you see kind of where he's going, right? Like you see why he took that turn. And
that's also the kind of shit that Kojima puts in like the trailer that comes out for like the launch of one of his games. Like here's 15 seconds from the final cutscene. Enjoy.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing I did want to say really fast too is like, if you are not bothered by spoilers out there, like that's fine, that's great. But like, just it's so easy to forget that like people take spoilers really differently, and like different levels of spoiler really differently. Like for some people, myself included, sometimes depending on the context, like just knowing that there is a twist in something will sometimes be like enough to be like wondering what it is for some people, whereas other people will just be like, oh, there's a twist, like, okay, that's fine. So like everyone sort of has a different tolerance of this, and if it doesn't seem like a big deal to you, like it can be to other people.
I'm very much I like that idea a lot. Like it kind of just, you know, play it close to the chest. I have like I walk a weird line with spoilers where when I was a kid, I used to like I read the entire leaked script for Star Wars Episode 2 before I saw it in theaters because I wanted to like know everything ahead of time. But that was almost like this self-preservation where I was like, I don't want this movie to be spoiled by anyone else but me, so I'm gonna like fall on my own sword or whatever. And then conversely, like now I'll do this thing where like I'll reach a certain point, like I'll see like the first 10 seconds of a trailer for something, and if I'm completely hooked, I'm like, no more, and then I will go on complete media blackout until it's time to actually see the thing. And that's been, you know, entirely fun. But then like weird flip side is sometimes it goes to the territory of this job is that like stuff has to be spoiled for work related thing. Like I worked the red carpet for Deadpool 2, and I was incredibly excited about that movie, and there was a bunch of stuff that was theoretically a surprise when I finally saw it, but it seemed like I wasn't going to get a chance to screen the movie before we did like interviews on the red carpet, and they were like, we need to have you up to speed on what happens in the movie. So Jackie Jing, who I used to work with, basically gave me an entire beat by beat synopsis of everything that happens in that movie on the assumption that I wouldn't be able to see it before we did this interviews. And I was like, well, that's deeply heartbreaking and bittersweet. But then I got to go see a screening for it, and it was like I knew exactly what would happen around every corner, but there was still tons of stuff in there, like moment to moment stuff and like little details that weren't spoiled. So like the big stuff was spoiled, but like it, I feel like it should never just be like it should never just be the destination with spoilers. Like there's always like good media always has some other value to it that like I mean conversely, like you could take the ending for Mass Effect 3, which is infamously not great, and you could probably rewrite that to sound really good. Like you could probably write a description in a comment where you describe it like vividly, and it sounds awesome. And that's sort of, I feel like, I don't know. I haven't even read the spoilers for Last of Us, but I don't know. Like I feel like you could spoil a big twist for me, and I would be like, well, I'm sure there's still going to be some like audio log in the corner of a room in that game that is more interesting to me than that. So
it's that kind of thing. It reminds me of like when people are challenged to tweet out your favorite movie in a misleading way or something like that, and people have to kind of like tweet out the synopsis of what the movie is, and it's always in this really different, unusual way because it lacks any of the context that kind of makes that movie what it is. I feel that's the same as reading a spoiler. It's just like we're all reiterating the same thing. It's just you're missing so much depth and character development and nuance that it might as well just be an obscure, tweeting out a game in an obscure way. It's not the actual finished product.
Yeah, we're obviously with what Naughty Dog has said about this game, it's their largest game yet. Like it is this massive undertaking that they have like figured out every little intricate bit of the story. I spoke to Neil Druckmann at the preview event, and he was talking about like even like what we've shown you, and I saw 2.5, 3 hours of the game is such a small sliver of what they have to show. And even if you out there like me or like Lucy have been blindsided, Lucy was so angry about them, she left. If you've been blindsided by a spoiler in the same way we have, like for me, I'm still very excited and interested to play this game because I want to see what the adventure is. And I don't think seeking out spoilers inherently itself is a bad thing. I think the way these spoilers have been put out there is the wrong bit of it, I guess, because like Lucy was saying, I don't think being mad at a company for having terrible work policies, if that's the case with Naughty Dog, is makes this act still not like this act is still a frustrating one, a disappointing one, because it does hurt so many other people and not just those people at the top.
It's like burning down. It's like burning down your apartment building because you're mad at your landlord. Like it doesn't just spite the landlord.
Yeah.
But it's also, I just want to say, like, if you share spoilers for the sole purpose of just like shitting on someone's day, then you're a dick. Like you're a dick.
Yeah.
And like there's kind of like there's no real kind of gray area there. And if you're cool with being a dick, that's power to you, brother or sister. But like I can't stand. I've already had people like tweet the spoilers at me and go on my Instagram and stuff, and it's just like, okay, cool. Like you did it. You really upheld your dickishness there, well done.
Yeah, it's a frustrating thing that's definitely going to be happening, I think, for a few weeks, since we have a little over a month and a half to go before this game. But so if you are out there and you don't want to be spoiled, be safe, mute some words on Twitter, maybe don't check message requests, DMs from strangers. Just take a couple precautions like we all did, like I did before Avengers Endgame and muted about 1,000 keywords. But yeah, it is unfortunate to see. I am excited to eventually play that game. It is kind of crazy, even though, like we were saying, time is irrelevant that we're that close to that game, even with the slight delay. That and Ghost is going to make for a very fun summer, I think. But moving on to a little bit of other news I want to mention this week. Pistol Whip is coming to PSVR. This is a really cool looking VR game that is out on other VR headsets. Have you played this, Tom?
Oh yeah, Pistol Whip's awesome.
Since you played it, do you want to describe it a little bit instead of me using like the canned blog post?
Yeah.
Not to put you on the spot.
Beat Saber is like Guitar Hero with lightsabers, and Pistol Whip is like Guitar Hero with guns. It's like that's kind of a really easy way of saying it. So you have pistols, and you're going down a hallway, like it's just automatically moving you forward. And while you're there, guys will come out at you, kind of like Western standoff movies, like pop out behind cover, or like not River City Ransom. Well, you know those old shooty games where you're like shooting at the guys, like the arcade shooters, like Time Crisis sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But you're moving, and you have to shoot them and kill them. But if you shoot them on the beat, you get more points. So like there's a song for every level, and you have to like, so it rocks you into this like rhythm where you have to be like bop 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 dodge bop bop bop, and like it's really really cool. It's a very very fun game.
Yeah, it looks like one of the fresher ideas of using VR for sort of a genre that we're all pretty familiar with, and as like a huge Beat Saber fan, it seems totally up my alley. And they keep referencing like John Wick action scenes but set to music, so I'll take that game. That's coming out this summer. Unfortunately, a little closer to the summer now, Star Wars Episode 1 Racer, just on PS4, was delayed from May 12th to the end of May. I believe it's May 24th or 26th. A weird 2-week delay. It's still coming to Switch on May 12th, so if you want it, go pick it up on Switch right away. If not, as Altano, I think is suggested on multiple shows, go buy it drunk on PS4 later this May. Little bit of a disappointing there. And in case you didn't get a chance to check it out, please go check out Simon Cardy from our IGN UK team. He was the one who reviewed Predator Hunting Grounds for us, the PS4 console exclusive, also out on PC. He didn't love it. He gave it a 5 out of 10. But you should definitely go check out. He has a lot more thoughts than just a number in his review, if you're wondering why he gave it that score. I've only been able to play a little bit of it. I don't know if anyone else has had time with it.
I played a handful of matches. I really like it. I don't know if I have like brain damage or something, but I'm like infamously like really soft on Predator things. And I think it's because the Predator is fundamentally a dumb property. Like I'm sorry if you think it's serious, but it's tomfoolery. That was a bunch of muscle men who took a vacation in Mexico, and then they made the muscle movie where they fight the lizard frog with the fishnet tights. But,
did you like the last Predator movie though, Max?
I did, and like that's why I said I think I have brain injuries.
It breaks my heart. That was a poop movie.
It was a mess of a film, but it was a loud, stupid mess, and I enjoyed myself with it. So I don't know what to tell you. Maybe you're being too easy. Maybe you're on the alien side based on your xenomorph tag. Maybe you play favorites with the other, not the Yautja, but the xenomorph. But no, like I don't know. I have an issue with just the fact that we do give like hard scored reviews to multiplayer games that are inevitably going to get patched and updated and stuff. And it's like, I don't know. I feel like that's like it. I don't know. Like stuff gets like I played it when it first launched, and it was like the servers were kind of a mess. And just like over the course of the weekend, they've improved that. So I mean, there's still like a bunch of texture popping and stuff. So I don't know. I mean, it's got its issues, but like I also was like, I don't know. I had a good time with it.
Tom, rebuttal.
Well, I mean,
just for insight as our deputy reviews editor,
Max, I think that you're fundamentally wrong and have brain damage. Pretty much is just no.
Right.
No, I think it's a really really good point, because it's something that we've talked about a lot on the reviews team too, of just like how you adapt, because every game is a living game now, whether it wants to say it's a living game or it comes along with those connotations or not. And the way we've sort of adjusted to that is like we re-review games more now than we have kind of ever, right? Like we just did a re-review of Sea of Thieves. We've done re-reviews of Rainbow Six Siege, of all sorts of games, right? Like I'm totally blanking.
Rocket League, has gotten
a million different things. And like I think that's kind of the way we just take that, is like I'm cool with putting a number on what it is right now, because fundamentally what it is, hey, this is a product that is being sold. Like, does this reviewer think that you should buy it right now? Does this reviewer recommend what is available to you at this moment? And inevitably, like you said, those get out of date because online games change. And once they get out of date, if they get out of date enough that it becomes a different enough experience, we'll revisit it. They're totally open to that.
Yeah, and I've definitely appreciated the more you guys have started to implement re-reviews. Sorry, Max, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I mean, it's this is a obviously a bigger conversation. I'm willing to forgive the Predator for his flaws, because I'm like, I get pumped about stupid Predator shit, but like,
yeah, man.
I don't know. It's weird because like we see like some of the biggest games that people are still playing. Like when they launched, we were like, I don't know, 7 out of 10. And then it's like 5 years later, we're like, all right, so should we like host the esports tournament for it because it's the biggest game on earth? Or like, what do we, like, what do you do there? But
I mean, yes.
Alternatively, though, we just reviewed Fallout 76 Wastelanders and gave that a 6. So, not all games get.
Yeah, but that reminds me pretty distinctly of
fair point.
Rainbow Six Siege, which Tom, did you do the re-review for?
I did do the re-review.
Yeah.
Don't even remember what I gave.
But that's definitely a game that I think at launch a lot of us, I think we gave it somewhere around a 6. Like we gave it a somewhat middling review, and it was one of those like, well, they tried a different thing with Rainbow Six and we moved on, but the world didn't, and it became one of the biggest games in the world. And
Ubisoft improved that game a lot, right?
Yeah.
To Max's point, like there's totally examples of games that started, like No Man's Sky is another really great example of a game that launched with a lot of struggles and a lot of complaints, and over the years got tons of free updates, and we re-reviewed it, and it's a much, much better game than it was before. Like it's not just
and it's Final Fantasy 14, right? Like,
right, yeah. Final Fantasy 14 is the best comeback story of all.
Yeah, the biggest comeback story.
Yeah, even games that didn't need a comeback, like The Witcher 3 revamped its combat system post-launch.
It's just showing off.
Yeah, they just were like, oh, what's the one not great thing? We'll make that better. But yeah, it's definitely go check out Simon's full review for his impressions, and it's currently available. I've played a few matches and had a fun time, but want to dive into it more and definitely see what like the long tail of a game like that with the Predator will be like. But I figure we can jump into what we're playing this week. And Tom, since you are our guest this week, why don't you tell me what you've been playing? Because you've been playing a game I really love, and I want to talk about it.
I've been like flush with games recently. Like I think it was basically since Animal Crossing came out, it feels like I have too many things to play in like a really, really satisfying, good way. So I've been playing a lot of Animal Crossing, but the thing I've kind of been spending most of my time with before my Final Fantasy review and now after my Final Fantasy review is Persona 5 Royal. I already played through all of Persona 5. I've talked about it on this show before. It's one of my favorite JRPGs, and like I'm just kind of I think I'm somewhere between 20 and 30 hours into Royal now, and I'm like so impressed with all of the changes that they've made. Like leading up to it from the Japanese launch and stuff like that, I'd heard a lot of disappointment from people being like, it's not kind of enough. It just sort of feels like a DLC tacked on, but like I'm nowhere near any of the like really, really new content at the end of the game. And there's already so many changes that are just absolutely amazing to me. Like I love the new additions to the battle system. I love the new additions to like with the persona skills and kind of some of the changes that have been made to combining them. I love the new confidants. I love how they've changed mementos. I've loved how they've upgraded some of the fights and some of the palaces. It just really feels like they just made an incredible game better. Like I can't believe they did it, but they really basically just looks like they went down a laundry list of like what are the minor complaints that people have with this game? Let's fix them. And that is so cool. And I never thought I was gonna beat Persona 5 to start, and now I cannot believe I am really ready to play it a second time. Like that's wild to me. So I've been having a blast with that.
Even though you know the story twists of that game.
Yeah, it's true. Even though I know it. Although I guess I don't, because there's a new twist. Whatever. Yeah.
If you're trying to avoid spoilers for Persona 5 Royal, don't play Persona 5 That's the trick right there. Full of spoilers.
Well, so here's the other thing: is like Persona 5 Royal is so good, I would never recommend anyone play Persona 5 anymore. Like, there's no reason in my mind to go back to the original. That's kind of how definitive this feels.
Yeah, I was just about to ask that.
I got 3/4 of the way through Persona 5, and it's still installed on my PlayStation with the intention to go back. But now, listen to you. You're convincing me to throw it all away and set fire to it and get a brand new game.
Even within the first 5 hours for me, I haven't gotten to as much as Tom has, but even just in the first few hours when I started playing it, it was one of those things where, one, as someone who loves the game, I somehow had nostalgia for a 3-year-old game. I was like, oh yeah, I loved this. This was such a great, amazing experience for me. But just even the little touches here or there just made everything feel so fresh, even at the start, that I can only imagine as someone who didn't finish, you'll continue to go through and find so much new.
Hey, I got a question.
Yeah.
How do they get a pass for this? Like how is it that we get people like just railing about being nickel and dimed over like DLC or expansions or like on disc stuff or like things being chipped off into episodic releases, not pointing any fingers here, but for whatever reason it's totally okay for Atlas to be like, surprise, here's an extra mission or two or like some extra content, but it's baked into the full game, sold at retail price. Like that seems like
It didn't just Tom just sort of answer that with all his laundry list?
I'm not
of
saying no, but
improvements?
but specifically because people already purchased the regular version, like
And
like,
you can't.
I think you're
Right.
total. No. Yeah. So like, to what Lucy was saying, yeah, I think that the improvements are significant, but you're totally right that like this is something that other people would be called out for, and I think they are getting called out for it a little bit. But
Yeah.
like, I think probably one of the answers is that it's sort of been long enough and it adds enough, and the game is so enormous already that like it's and also I think there's just a little bit of history with Persona because Persona has done this 2 times previously, right? With Persona
They did
4
it-
Golden.
well,
Yeah.
Golden was on Vita.
Right.
Like
But it
that was I think they got the excuse there to be like, oh, we moved it from
Oh, yeah.
PS2 to Vita. So in this case, it's like this could very easily have been like, oh, it's Persona 5 Game of the Year edition or whatever. And
Well,
then
Yes.
to be fair, Persona 4 started as a PS3 game. Or Persona 5, excuse me, started as a PS3 game.
Mm,
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, I think the answer is that sometimes they I don't know, the rules don't make sense anymore.
Yeah. I will say I think that was
Podcast over.
that was definitely some of the initial blowback when it first came out in Japan was people kind of digging it because you can't, as someone who's played Persona 5, I can't download a patch and buy a season pass to just put that content in my original game, which is a weird thing that you do have to go and buy this full priced version, but it's really fun and I love
I think
Persona, so I'm allowing
that's a
it.
testament to Personas. You can't even
Yeah.
stay mad at it. It like
Yeah.
yeah, sure thing, baby. $60, whatever you want,
I'm smiling thinking about, oh yeah, I get to go back and play more of it after this. I'm excited for that.
And especially if you compare it to something like the other game I'm playing a little bit of right now, which is Monster Hunter World. Like the Iceborne expansion was sold as an expansion, but if you didn't have World, once Iceborne came out, you could buy them for one package for $60, right? And Iceborne was as big as the base game. So like that is inarguably a better deal, right, for the consumer. It's so much of a better deal. It's so much cheaper. It's so much more effective too if you already have the base game. So yeah, I think you're right. I think that there are better ways they could have done this, and it's just like enough of a game and enough of a good game and a new game that people just sort of are looking the other way in a lot of time.
Yeah. Max, you said you were playing Predator. Have you been playing that and anything else, or mostly focused on
I just jumped into Streets of Rage 4 during my lunch. My wife and I jumped in and played some co-op, and it's fun as hell.
Yeah.
It's like I mean, it's exactly what it looks like. It feels like the original. Like kind of for better or for worse. I really like the hand-drawn sprites, but there's still stupid arcadey shit where you're like you wind up like punching your co-op partner in the face a bunch of times, or like and it's not going to say hard. It's like it's as sort of unforgiving as those games used to be, where if you like get get your ass kicked with like that much life on a boss, it doesn't let you do like a checkpoint. You're like, nah, get back in there at the beginning and go eat more roast turkey out of garbage cans. But music's great, presentation's awesome. It's like exactly the kind of dumb, brainless, like button mashy stuff that I'm having fun with. So
yeah, I've been playing a bit of that as well and did the same, played co-op with my girlfriend. And yeah, it's exactly what I want from Streets of Rage, which is more Streets of Rage. The special moves are fun. I like testing out the different characters. The like risk and reward of using your special attacks, but that also knocks down your health is a really fun mechanic to have in play because you can accidentally really put yourself in a bad place with that stuff. But it's been a lot of fun to see like old character models of the main characters you play as, and also like the enemies come back in new ways, and just the way they're integrating it all together. I'm really enjoying it so far too. Lucy, what have you been playing?
Oh well, it's a PlayStation podcast.
Oh no,
I just
Lucy.
I know. I've just been playing loads of Animal Crossing just because
fair.
it's like it's where my mental state is right now. I just need very basic tasks to, challenge myself to complete, and then I complete them, and then I feel like I've achieved something in this strange wasteland of a existence we have right now. But no, just that and Final Fantasy VII still, which I'm still having a total blast with. I haven't finished it because I've been distracted with my Animal Crossing, but I'm almost there.
You better get there before we do a spoiler cast.
When are we doing
I
that?
don't you worry, I will.
Do we pick a date for that?
We're looking into timing right now. Yeah, Amanda on our video production team has been helping me try to figure out a schedule for that.
Okay, I don't know how much more I have to do with that game. I'm at the very end, and I'm just. It kind of like it's weird. It definitely kind of hits like a lull. Like it gets to a point where there's some pacing stuff towards the tail end where you're kind of like, oh, like back to another building, I guess. All right, anyway.
The cycle of that stuff I definitely get, and I think that's something that Tom spoke to in his review really well. Was like there's a lot of the great like main campaign that they push you through, but then as you start to do the side stuff and some of the ancillary stuff that feels like filler, it gets in the way of what's really great about that game sometimes. But we'll talk about that more in the spoiler cast for sure. I also wanted to mention briefly, I decided to jump back into Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag.
My favorite Assassin's Creed.
Because I never played more than the first hour or two of it. As much as I love that franchise, it was just like when the new consoles came out, I was distracted with a bunch of other things and just never got to it. So it was on sale at like Christmas time, and I'm finally jumping back in. And yeah, that is a really good Assassin's Creed game. I get why everyone loves it so much.
It's
like,
so good.
Wow, there are all these little moments that happened. Because for me, one of my favorite things in Assassin's Creed is in 2 when you have Ezio's villa. Like I'm just a sucker for when you have like a home base that you can build up. And so like Ezio's villa, or like in Ni no Kuni 2.
Like a little game called Animal Crossing.
I've heard of it. My turnip prices are actually pretty good today. But so I loved the Ni no Kuni 2 Kingdom. I loved Ezio's village. And so here, when you find out you basically have your own like pirate town that you have to build up, and you have to like start different businesses in there. And then you get Kenway's fleet, which is basically like the Assassin's Creed 2 Brotherhood mechanic is put in there too. And it's like all these great elements on top of really, really fun naval combat. I looked it up because I was curious. That map is virtually the same size as Odyssey's map, and they're by far the 2 biggest Assassin's Creed maps of the entire franchise. Like Origins, I think, is half the size of Black Flag and Odyssey's map. It's just huge.
So big it broke Jonathan.
Did he freeze and then making the worst face?
That is a great face.
That's
the worst
really
face.
good face.
Wow, I thought that was me for a second, but you guys are still talking. Oh my gosh, Dorno.
Do you think a ghost happened? Yeah, I think a ghost happened.
Can you hear me now?
Whoa.
Yes, you're back.
This episode is cursed. This is a cursed episode of Beyond.
Honestly,
I love
if you got killed by the Babadook right there, I would believe it.
Yeah.
Like you went like, and then you were frozen like that, and then the next thing that came up was just like this blurry black and white shadowy thing. So
oh my god.
Yeah.
You will die 7 days after watching this episode of Beyond, so thanks for tuning in. Share it with 12 friends or something bad will happen. Anyway, yeah, Black Flag is really great and I'm loving it. And I can't wait until we eventually get more Assassin's Creed because Black Flag is great. I loved Odyssey. I'm excited to see where they go next. I think that pretty much wraps it up though for all of the main segments of what we had to talk about this week. If you're wondering, probably because when this episode goes up, we didn't talk about PlayStation Plus free games because they'll probably get announced as soon as we're done recording this. Those will be new next week, so we'll talk about that. Though, as a reminder, you can still pick up the free PlayStation games, the Uncharted Nathan Drake trilogy and Journey. If you have a PlayStation account, you don't need PS Plus. You can go play those games and play them because they're great games. Speaking of games we've picked up, though, Tom.
Go on, Tom.
Is it me?
No.
Tom.
Hi.
Hi. I'm just going to guess what Dorno was going to ask you. Did he say, speaking of games we're playing?
I
Is
think
that
he
his
said
lead?
you picked up. I think I know where he's going with this, actually.
All right, let's hear your answer.
I was talking about with him earlier in the week. I actually bought yesterday Last of Us Remastered because I had a moment where I heard about the spoilers and I was like, jokes on jerks who want to spoil it. I never played the first one, so I don't care. And then I was like, wait, that's a terrible way to think because that means I'm probably not gonna. Welcome back, Jonathan.
Hi, Dorno.
My computer is just frozen on the Discord, so I have no idea what's happening there.
Are you on your phone?
I'm on my phone right now.
Amazing. I was willing to bet you were
I
going to
love this
ask
brave
me.
new world.
Yeah, I was willing to bet you were going to ask me about a game I picked up being The Last of Us.
It was. How did
Hey, I did it. Yeah, no, I bought Last of Us Remastered because when I played Last of Us when I was younger, like when it first came out, I mean, I played about 4 hours and it was so like I respected the heck out of it. I thought it was really beautiful and really cool, but also it was so intentionally, mind you, like tense and like oppressive feeling that I was like, I could just play Mario and be happy instead of play this game and be sad. And so I went and like just played happier games. And like that's like was just an all me sort of thing. But I'm finally gonna play The Last of Us Remastered so that I can prep for the second one now that it has a maybe final release date. So that's what I
Tom, can I ask you to do something as well?
Yes.
Like once you finished The Last of Us, can you also please play Left Behind, which is
the DLC.
DLC, which is the best story DLC in my opinion one of the best story DLCs that exist. It's just an incredible standalone story told in the Last of Us universe, and I was very, very moved by it, and I think you will be too.
Cool. Yeah, I'll go for it. I'm excited. I'm excited to finally like see what all the hype is about.
How much do you guys want to bet that this next month's PlayStation Plus is Last of Us Remastered?
Didn't I miss it? Wasn't it a few months?
It was, I think, last year or the year before. But
Okay.
I wouldn't be shocked if it's again, or even if they do an extra bonus game this month that is The Last of Us, because whenever they do that, I'm like, oh, that's really smart. They did that with the Borderlands Handsome Collection. They've done that with a few other games, but I'm like, that should just always be the MO for PS Plus. Like, get people excited for a new game with the game before it in the franchise.
Yeah. Well, it was 25% off, so it was like $15, which seems criminally cheap for that game. So I'm just excited to finally be playing, like finally commit to it and be like, it's gonna make me sad, but that's okay. Like that's the point.
You should be sad anyway. It's 2020, buddy.
I'm already saturated in it. That's what you're saying. Max, I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm not a very sad guy.
I know.
Yeah, you don't really exude melancholy, do you?
No.
You're cherubic.
I could go put on like a gray bow tie instead of a rainbow one if that.
I want to see Bad Tom. I want to see you put on like a black bow tie and you're like, "Argh."
I have a bow tie with
Bad Tom.
I have one that's black with skull and crossbones. So I'll wear that next time I'm on the show.
I love it.
Perfect. I love the idea of Sad Tom. Yeah, definitely. Please let us know how that goes.
We all love the idea of Sad
we love the idea of Sad Tom. We like to just see the many facets of Tom. But definitely let us know how that goes. Because I'm now on my phone, I'm a little hamstrung about how to do things on this show. So I figured I'd wrap things up by asking Max, what's in your pocket?
Who puts things in their pockets anymore when they don't leave the house?
True.
I don't have anything in my pocket. I have nothing. There's literally no, I don't think even wearing a belt. No, I'm not wearing a belt. I might as well be in like a jail, you know, like I don't have anything I could use as a weapon or to hang myself. I mean, there's plenty of stuff around me, but what do I got here? What's some good treats? Here, let's check this out. Here's this model kit of Goku I've been working on. Can you see it? I gotta focus it. It's very small.
Yeah. It looks really good.
Not that one. How is it? Show it. Show the Goku. Oh no, what is it doing? There we go. No, show Goku. So yeah, it's a little model kit of Goku. I can't just stop focusing on me. Stop looking at me. Look at the Goku. There it is. Yeah, so it's a little model kit that I've been working on. And there's all sorts of other trinkets around me, but Yes.
You have photos of him on your Instagram, right?
Yeah. No, I've
Yeah,
been dabbling in Twitch streaming, so I was like painting that and drinking beer and talking to people quietly, and then people are like, this is like some weird ASMR stuff, kind of Bob Rossi. I'm into it. And I'm like, you should be more bored than you are.
All of your stuff looked amazing. I'm excited. Oh, and a Nerf blaster. I think that's probably a good sign that we should be wrapping up this show. So thank you so much to everyone who's been watching or listening to this episode of Beyond, episode 642 of our weekly PlayStation show. You can find us normally on IGN.com and YouTube.com/IGN Beyond, or Lucy in the ether, where she disappears to when this show ends. I am at JM Dornbush on Twitter. Tom is at Tom R. Marks. Lucy is at Luce O'Brien, and she's here to hear me say that. And Max is at Max Scoville. You can also find Brian, who's not with us this week. He was busy, but you can find him at Agent Bizzle. You should tweet at him and say, hey, Brian, you're awesome. Keep doing what you do, because, he's not here to hear me say this, so tell him that. And otherwise, you can find us IGN.com, YouTube.com/IGN. Everything we make, write, shoot, film, produce, edit, listen to, it's all there. Anyway, thank you all so much for listening and or watching. Thank you to Red, our producer, and as always, Beyond.
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 Beyond.